Hi there. Thank you for joining UnSCRIPted. I'm Angela Kashuba, Dean of the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. We have an amazing community here at the school, all working towards a shared goal of solving the world's most pressing healthcare challenges. I'm excited for you to hear unscripted stories of our faculty, staff, students, alums, and partners. Today, I have invited Tony Hickey, Professor Emeritus of the Division of Pharmacoengineering and Molecular Pharmaceutics at the school, to my office for a conversation. Welcome, Tony, and thanks for joining us
great
today.
Great to be here.
So tell me about your journey to UNC.
I studied in the UK at the University of Aston in Birmingham. And when I graduated from there, I went through a postdoc to the University of Kentucky, where I first met Dean Brower, and then came to the University of Illinois for a brief time and came here in 1993. Okay. So it's now 30 years ago, and have been here ever since. And it's lived up to all my expectations.
So what were the experiences that you had here that supported your success?
Well, so initially, of course, you settle in and you look at your programs, and the first thing was collaboration. So you look around campus for people that you can work with. And of course, the fantastic group at, in the Cystic Fibrosis Center in lung biology, Rick Boucher was very welcoming when I came.
Yes.
Within the school, we had a lot of people that had expertise that related to what I was doing. And of course, the program was attracting amazing graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. And so that was the first thing, build the program, collaboration. And then we went from there, and just talking to people in Research Triangle Park and around the area, how could I sort of expand a lot of industry interest in what I was doing. And this was sort of pushing me more towards the commercial side of things. Okay. So, and I had anticipated that to some degree, but it took off very quickly. So I grew a program that ultimately led to the formation of Cirrus Pharmaceuticals in 1997, and then later to Oriel Therapeutics, which was in 2001, I think. And I couldn't have done any of that without, first of all, the student input to sort of grow the program, and then some really outstanding people that were here. So without this area, without the school, I don't think it would have been possible.
That's interesting. So tell me about aerosolized products, your interest in them, and where you see drug development going in terms of aerosolized products in the future.
Yeah, so interestingly, I started off working on a very esoteric type of research in hygroscopic growth of aerosols, something that most people wouldn't even care about or know about. But what happened at the end of the 80s was that the ozone depletion by chlorofluorocarbon propellants meant that we were trying to get those out of inhaled products. So most people know the little puffer inhaler devices that have propellant in. They contribute to ozone depletion, or they did. So that was going on. And then at the same time, the biotechnology industry was really growing. And they were looking at alternative routes of administration. And so pulmonary became a route that they were interested in. And so all of a sudden, I went from this esoteric backwater of physical chemistry to this is cutting edge reformulation of from CFCs, and how do we deliver proteins and peptides. So that sort of my career at that point took off. It was largely around asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And of course, now what's happening, especially coming off a respiratory pandemic, with COVID, there's much more interest in infectious diseases, treating infectious diseases, and then also being able to use the current tools of biotechnology to manipulate the lungs. Okay,
that's terrific. I do think COVID has really changed our viewpoint or our approach to drug therapy as well. So I do think that you have to try and develop drugs for the next pandemic. Doing something that might be more inhalational than systemic is probably of significant benefit, right? Just from a toxicity perspective, from an efficacy perspective.
Yeah.
So after you retired from UNC, you were affiliated with Research Triangle Institute. Can you talk about your experiences there?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, so I moved from, I should say, I intended to retire.
Right.
So there was, that was my serious intent. And what happened was I had a grant in review for a new drug, an inhaled therapy for tuberculosis. So I had been reasonably successful in commercializing things that had come out of the laboratory. But TB is not a disease where you can make a lot of money, and so it's sort of really a not-for-profit activity. So a grant came along that I really hadn't expected would be funded, and fellows that I knew at RTI said, well, why don't you consider coming here to do that work? After all, we're a not-for-profit, and this is a not-for-profit activity, really. So I was welcomed by people that essentially recruited me there. The teams that came ultimately to support the program, and it's grown in size, and there are other programs there now, both in TB and non-tuberculous mycobacteria. So yes, the teams there are great. People are great.
That's terrific. So your career intersects science, innovation, and entrepreneurship, like all of those things together. What advice do you have for students who might be interested in following that path?
The first thing you have to have in your heart is why you want to do it. And I was a scientist, some would say applied scientist, technologist, working on aerosol delivery systems for some of them quite old drugs, those novel delivery systems.
Yes.
But I had been an asthmatic as a child, and so I had that knowledge of what it's like not to be able to breathe. I can't say it was a driver to do the work, but it was relevant to the way that I thought about it. And so since I presume that the people we're talking about would be interested in bringing forward new therapies or cures for diseases, you have to hold the patient in your heart the whole time. You know, why are you doing this? There are going to be moments, there are always bumps in the road, whether it's fundraising or the technology isn't going the way you want it to go. And if you can't picture the people that would benefit from this, and I mean the one person, people largely in the sort of not-for-profit community are thinking about the entire community of people that would benefit from the treatment. And I understand that it's the way that you invest money. You want to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, to treat as many people as possible. But we, the researchers, have to hold that first patient. If you can do one patient, you can do as many as you like. So just that first patient. So if you hold that in your heart as you're doing things, then there are all the other challenges. So, of course, you need your intellectual property, which presumably you can drive through whatever position you're in. You need connections into the investment community. And these days, I think that's all there. I mean, this is an incredible place to be if you need that sort of support. Everywhere you turn, you have entrepreneurs. Everywhere you turn, there are people that want to help you. So from that perspective, you hope the bumps are very small and you can basically push forward. But there will be those days, and the day that you pitch and people are not interested, and you wonder, am I going in the right direction? And there, the thing I would say is, even before you start, if you know people who are in a similar field, just ring them and bounce the idea off. Be prepared to listen. You know, if somebody tells you, no, this isn't going to work, listen to that. You might want to reframe it in some way.
Yeah, a lot of great things in there. So something that we say at the school often is everything we do begins and ends with the patient in mind. So that really resonates. And the grit and determination that you need to get through all of those hurdles is important. But listening to what other people have to say. I think sometimes we're afraid to get advice because we think we're moving in the right direction, and maybe we'll have naysayers, but it's important to listen.
I think it's important to recognize that there's no limit to the number of ideas you can have.
Yeah.
And so the first idea may not be the one.
Yes.
And so be willing to drop it. Don't get so invested in the idea that this is the thing. Again, not too hastily, though. I mean, you do have to challenge it. Maybe there's another way of doing it. Maybe there's something there. But in the end, through your career, you can have a lot of ideas. It doesn't have to be the first one or the third one.
Yeah, no, I love that. You are a very highly decorated researcher. You have won many awards. What would you say, as you look back on your career, was really the highlight or the thing that you're most proud of?
I think maybe the first one, it was the AAPS gave me a Young Scientist Award, and I think it was in 1990. The validation that everything I was doing. There have been moments, certainly, when I knew that I had stepped into a new area that perhaps nobody else was looking at.
Yeah.
And so consequently, people couldn't really comment. You sort of had to trust your own. You knew you weren't doing anything fundamentally wrong, but at the same time, until you played that out, you didn't know whether it was right. So since that was sort of the first validation of everything that I was doing to that date, that was probably the most important one. And then the rest have just been icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's terrific. I want to ask you one more question. You are a motorcyclist.
Yeah.
Talk about motorcycling and why you're drawn to that, and maybe give us a sense of your best ride ever.
Oh, okay. So So I had motorcycles when I was young. Not for very long. It's the sort of thing that as a youngster you sort of had a motorcycle. Had friends who were real enthusiasts. I can't say that I was anywhere near their level of enthusiasm, but I sort of lived in that community with them and the respect that they had for the motorcycle and everything they did on it. And not to mention sort of the technology, engines, fascinated with engines when you're young. My best ride, that's tough. So I went through petrified forest, and it was a certain time of day. I've never been able to recreate this. I've done it several times, and it's never worked. And as I came over a rise, painted desert cliffs were laid out in front of me.
Yes.
And the impression, because your head is rising, is that somebody's drawn up a curtain that's beautiful. And the sun is all the greens and blues and reds that are in the cliff. It's disorienting. You'd never have that experience in a car because it's framed by the windshield. And so, and as I said, I've tried to repeat. I've been back there. It must have been the time of day where the sun was at once in life. So, those are my experiences. Yeah. Those are the things I look forward to when I'm on a motorcycle.
That's inspiring. I think you might have just inspired the rest of our audience to go and buy a motorcycle. Tony, thanks for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate talking to you.
My great pleasure. Always good to see you.
Yeah, it's very fun. And I want to thank you for watching. We love sharing stories of those who make the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy excellent. We hope you will join us for the next episode of UnSCRIPted, conversations with the people who are advancing medicine for life.